seems like a lot of people are on now. Welcome to those of you who have logged in. Looks like a lot of audio people. If you have a webcam, we'd be happy to see you too. Hi there.
Just as a quick reminder to everybody joining the call, I'm going to be muting people as they come online. So if you're trying to speak and nobody's paying attention, make sure you unmute yourself.
Okay, so let's get started. Our president of PWA, Bill Spearman, will welcome us. I just want to say a few logistical issues before we get started. A lot of you have been spending your lives on this platform over the last weeks, and what I'm hearing a lot of is it's great, but it falls flat. So we will be interspersing PowerPoint slides and videos and polling as well, so we make sure that you stay awake. Because we're embarking on all of that, things might go wrong, so have patience, and it should be fun and enlightening. With that, Bill.
Thank you, Scott, and good morning, everyone. I'm Bill Spearman, the current president of the American Public Works Association, and I want to welcome you to this congressional briefing as we celebrate National Public Works Week. This is an event that's been celebrated since 1960 by APWA and others, and it's a chance for us to recognize the men and women in the public works industry, as well as the essential services that they provide every day to make our lives better and to advance the quality of life for all. I especially want to thank Congresswoman Titus from Nevada and Congressman Fitzpatrick from Pennsylvania for chairing the House Public Works and Infrastructure Caucus. This is a very important group that really supports the infrastructure that helps us have the quality of life that we need in the United States. Even though she wasn't able to be with us today, Congresswoman Titus did record a personal message to recognize National Public Works Week and the important frontline role that public works professionals have in our country. Congresswoman Titus.
Here we go. I will try to make this happen for you. Nod if you can see my screen with the start of the video. Here we go.
As co-chair and founder of the Public Works and Infrastructure Caucus, along with my colleague, Representative Brian Fitzpatrick.
Audio's okay?
I want to wish everyone a happy Public Works Week. I thank you all for joining us today for this important conversation. And I'd especially like to thank the American Public Works Association for organizing this briefing. The coronavirus pandemic has shined a bright light on the frontline workers who keep our cities and towns operating, and who in times like these we really count on to keep us safe. As millions work from home, these essential employees are putting their health and the health of their loved ones at risk to ensure that we have clean water, our trash is removed, and our roadways are operating to bring critical supplies to where they're needed in a safe and efficient way. As states and localities all across the country combat the virus, their budgets have been deeply impacted, threatening these vital services and jobs. That's why the recently passed HEROES Act included $1 trillion to support essential workers at risk of losing their jobs. And it set up a HEROES Fund to provide hazardous pay for those frontline employees. Today's briefing will give us an opportunity to discuss this important work and to think and plan for the future. I want to thank our panelists for their expertise and encourage any colleagues who are not already a member of our caucus to reach out to Ben Rosenbaum in my office and join us. Thank you, and I look forward to continuing to work with you all as we address infrastructure investment as part of our long-term recovery.
And thank you so much, Congresswoman Titus. She is definitely a champion of infrastructure. I had the pleasure of working with her and spending time with her, as well as Congressman Fitzpatrick. And so thank you again. And as she encouraged, please encourage your members of Congress to also join the Infrastructure Public Works Caucus. In addition to providing the leadership, she and Congressman Fitzpatrick, along with Congresswoman Craig of Minnesota, have introduced Resolution 969 that would recognize National Public Works Week. In the Senate, Senator Inhofe and Harris, along with other colleagues, have introduced Senate Resolution 585 to also recognize National Public Works. Thank you to our Congress supporters from both sides of the aisle who really recognize the important work that the public works industry and the professionals involved in it do. Today, we have three very outstanding panelists that I also have the pleasure of knowing. First of all, we have Director Gelhart from DC. Chris is a wonderful person who's been involved in public works and the emergency management area for many years, and it really fits him well as we go into this pandemic and the reactions that we have there. So Chris, you gave us a good briefing when we were in Washington in March, and wow, has the world changed since March 11th when we were all together, Chris. Also, we have a dear friend of mine, Ray Funny from the great county of Georgetown County down in the low country of South Carolina. If anybody's ever been there, when you see rain, you understand why it is the low country. But Ray's a dear friend of mine and a former top 10 public works leader of the year. From Moscow, Idaho, we have Tyler Palmer, who is the deputy city supervisor. Tyler has been involved in many aspects of APWA, and I consider him a dear friend as well. Leading our panel today will be our CEO of APWA, Scott Grayson, who is a former city council person in Minnesota. So he understands the public works industry from both sides. Scott, take it away.
Thanks so much, Bill. Appreciate it. And thanks for everyone who's online. We run a lot of these briefings all year long in conjunction with the House Public Works and Infrastructure Caucus in person. I think all of us would rather have it in person, but short of that, we want to make sure that all of you are aware of what's happening out there in the world of public works, and what better week than National Public Works Week. So want to welcome everyone. Director Geldert has been called away in a half hour. He's still here. So I want to get him on as much as possible in the first half, and we may move a few things around. But as a starting point, I'd like each of you to say once more who you are, what city you're with, what your population is, and what areas of public work practice you're responsible for. What people don't always understand, even if you know what public works is, there's nearly 600 different practices, from dealing with water, clean water, roads, snow and ice removal, beaches, airports, a very wide range of public works. So Chris, would you start? And I've got slides for each of you that show some aspect of your city and or project. So as I have slides up, if you want to speak about them, fine. If not, they're an enhancing image.
Thank you, Scott, and thank you, Bill, as well for the introduction. As Bill mentioned in the beginning, well, let me start with what was asked for by Scott. The Public Works Department in Washington, D.C., we have, of course, the sanitation side of things, and that's everything from trash recycling, alley cleaning, street cleaning, mowing, leaf removal, snow removal, all of those things that the sanitation entities, most sanitation entities have some part of in a city. We also do all the parking enforcement for the city, and that includes the towing, the booting, abandoned vehicles, and all of that kind of thing, as well as we own the city's fleet, so all the vehicles in the fleet, as well as all the repair shops and all of that. So those are our major focus areas of efforts. Of course, we do many other things like every other public works department does, but those are our major areas of focus.
Thanks, Chris. Ray? You might be muted. Let's find him on my screen. Ray, you still there?
Yeah, I am.
Okay, good.
Good morning. Thank you very much for having me. My name is Ray Funny. I'm with Georgetown County here in the low country of South Carolina. And the population here in Georgetown is about 62,000. We are a coastal community sandwiched between Charleston and Myrtle Beach. We are principally responsible for several divisions here. Transportation, all of our streets and roads and drainage is under our Public Works group. We also have our solid waste department, environmental services, where we handle collections, recycling, landfill. We have engineering and capital projects, where we help handle and assist with all of our capital projects for the county. We also have a stormwater group that is really here to help us with clean water, make sure that we do all we can in permitting and inspection to ensure that we have clean water in Georgetown and the surrounding areas. We also are responsible for facilities. All of the county's facilities, structure, we build them, we maintain them, and we do all we can to help with that. We are also working with our airports. We have 2 airports here in Georgetown, 2 general aviation airports in Georgetown and county, and we are responsible to help with the direction and the operation associated with that. So that's our group here in Georgetown.
Thanks so much, Ray. Tyler Palmer from Idaho. Here we go.
That's right. Thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here with y'all this morning. It's a little earlier for us over here than maybe for a lot of you, but wonderful to be up and be chatting with everyone. As Scott mentioned, I work for the city of Moscow, Idaho. Moscow's in the panhandle of Idaho, so in the northwest. We have a population of about 25,000, which can seem pretty small, but it's a little deceiving in the nature of the community. With our relative geographic isolation here in the inland northwest, it means that we end up having a pretty urban slate of services that we have. We're the county seat as well as the home of the state's land-grant university, the University of Idaho. So we have very urban services and a pretty high level of expectation for those services in our community. We provide a full slate of services, including water, production and distribution, wastewater conveyance and treatment, streets, fleet, storm, environmental services, and sanitation. It's plenty to keep us busy in a small area, and we've got a really committed group of people that keeps everything running for all the residents that live here in Moscow and all this.
Are you finished?
Yeah.
We froze on my end. Thanks. Appreciate that, Tyler. So I'm going to stop sharing the screen there. And what I'd like next is we have a really great video that I believe the Washington Post shot and the district has shared with us to give our audience a little flavor about our people truly on the front lines and what that experience is like. So with that, I'll ask Derek, our trusty helper here, to share this incredible video. And not if you can see it, and not if there's audio, when there is audio.
Hey, I care about you.
Yeah.
I don't want you exposed.
Audio?
So again, I'm telling you, this is
Okay.
Is the audio going through?
It was. And then if you can enlarge
This is it right here. Y'all got to take care of each other.
Look, our people are no different than anybody else. They're no different than the police officers and the firefighters. They're putting themselves out there to potentially be exposed, more than the people that are staying at home.
You all know as well as I do, you got a hard job. You are just like every other first responder right now.
I pray that none of us get sick. We out there. We out there in it.
I just want to let y'all know this is serious, you know what I'm saying? I just lost my son this morning with coronavirus, and I'm here. He live in Detroit. He just passed away, 32 years old, you know?
I mean, right now, it's a scare. It's more responsibility because you never know if you're gonna be sick, maybe. So it's scary, but it's a job that we gotta do it too.
We give them the masks, they put the masks on, get in the truck, windows down, try to keep some airflow going on in there so it's not, we're lessening as much as we can any exposure they'll have from each other. And really at this point, that's the best we can do with our folks in the vehicles.
Let me tell you what happened. I got my staff to clean the truck before they get in. I clean the truck. We got hand sanitizer. Well, we really need more hand sanitizer. We got masks, we got gloves, and we got everything. So we're trying to be the safe possible.
Additional weeks locally by the United States.
I do take pride in my job because if I don't do it, then who gonna do it? Somebody gotta be the one to go out there and get it. That's a must. The trash must continue to get up. I don't know. Somebody just left when it came. So thank you to our wonderful recycling crew. We appreciate you so much. My job don't stop. I gotta go to work, rain, sleet, or snow. I gotta be out there.
Collecting trash is a pass-fail business, right? You either did or you didn't. There's no in between. And our guys feel that every day, and making sure they're getting through their routes and they're getting every can, they're putting the cans back where they go, and they're doing that work. You know, that fails, and that truly is, to society, a failure of society, a failure of government, and we're not gonna let that happen.
Thanks, Chris. I'll start with you, since you were actually in that. When you're balancing the safety of your employees with the safety of the public, and looking at, okay, what happens if you don't collect the waste? What impact would that have on the public versus the health risks of the employees, and how do you balance those two?
Sure, thanks, Scott. I do just want to say to everybody, I'm not a crazy man. That's our 5:15 a.m. roll call that you saw me at. There were a lot of people there. That was before we dispersed our crews across the city to do their roll calls in all quadrants of the city. So that's about 250 people out there that you got to get the point across to. So I'm really not that much of a crazy man, I would say. Got my Marine voice on to so everybody could hear me. You know, the Scott, I think the biggest thing, and there's a bunch of folks on here that do this for a living like I do, are the concerns and the rationality that went around the beginnings and still to some point today around this coronavirus, and how we take care of each other and how we take care and ensure folks we stem the tide of this virus, especially in our crews that have to do the work every day. That was tough to deal with. And getting through to people that, you know, it's not really necessarily the trash that's going to get you sick, it's each other that's going to get you sick. And taking a community that's used to being very close. I mean, you see them that come in every morning and basically hugging each other every morning, and tell them you can't do that anymore, because that's how we're going to spread the virus here to your fellow coworkers. That's one of the hardest things in all this. And then to your point of, you know, getting up the trash and the recycling, and, you know, we also do 7,000 litter cans every night in the city, public litter cans. You know, all that has to continue. And we've been very fortunate here in the city that our morale has stayed high, our numbers have stayed high. We sit on average between 50 and 80 people out, whether they be from, they actually are positive for the coronavirus, or they've been in close proximity to somebody that has been, so on that 14 days of quarantine. So shuffling people around the organization to make sure every route's filled every day and gets completed every day is a major focus for the organization. But really, the biggest thing I think in all of this is, even if we don't pick up every single can, even if we miss a couple cans on a route someday, which we all know happens for reasons, who knows, and there are hundreds of them. The fact that people see those garbage trucks rolling down the street and those recycling trucks every day lets them know that government's still operating. We're still there. It's another day. It's another day that we're still operating, and it's not a complete total failure within our whole system. So
Right.
I think that's been the biggest thing. Kids coming out. I can't say I did a recycling route and two garbage routes during this pandemic, and the amount of people that are coming out, the kids coming out and waving, parents coming out, and people coming out and saying thank you for doing what you're doing is pretty incredible.
Thank you. If our other panelists won't mind, I'm going to stick with Chris a little while longer, since we lose him shortly. So to that point, if you were on and heard Congresswoman Titus's video, you heard her speak about the recently passed House bill, the HEROES Act. Clearly, your employees are heroes. You often hear that a lot of the United States that are still employed are able to work from home. You can't collect trash over the internet, and I really feel like, especially during National Public Works Week, they are our heroes. To the point about the HEROES Act, it's been speaking about providing more aid to state and local governments. In the earlier aid packages, a lot of the aid was directed at cities with larger populations. I know obviously the district is, but I'll start with you, Chris. Have you received, I mean, you are a federal city, so that's a strange question, but have you received any enhanced aid packages out of any of the coronavirus bills?
So for the district itself, we're no different than any of the other states. The fact that the seat of the federal government is here doesn't really amount to anything more than, I think, the city itself gets, I think, $13 million a year to help with security and things like that around the First Amendment events and things like that here. So aside from that, we just receive the same amount of stuff every state does, except for that first bill, where we weren't considered for the first time a state, even though our population is more than, I think, almost 14 states. We only got half of what the other states did from the first bill, funding-wise. So we're hoping the HEROES bill goes through, becomes law, because that gets us the other $755 million all the other states got, especially states with less population than us.
Right. Right.
However, the city has been fortunate over the last several years to be in a very good financial situation, which hasn't always been the case, to the fact of the reserves of cash that we've had in the city, and our bond ratings have allowed us to weather this pretty well. We'll see how that goes over the next year to 2 years, but from the initial response, we've been able to weather it pretty well. I just got my budget for 2021, the revised budget since the pandemic hit, and my budget actually went up $1.2 million, which is shocking when there's other agencies that are losing a lot more than that. No reduction in force at all across the agency. Actually, I got 6 more employees for my disposal unit. So we've done really well in this, and I think our mayor recognizes the importance. That's difficult sometimes when your elected officials are making decisions on what's important, especially when they're backed up against the wall on something like this. HEROES Act is going to help. I can tell you that. There are a lot of big capital projects and things that we need to do infrastructure-wise for disposal in our city that we were trying to do that have now been pushed off 6 years. So my hope is that HEROES Act comes through and not only keeps everybody whole, but allows us to do those things that we all know are vitally important for our operations going forward.
Thank you. I'm going to ask that of the other panelists, but I know you have to leave in a moment. Do you have any last parting words? You've got Hill staff on the line. You may have some members of Congress on as well. Any messages that they should hear about public works pre-COVID, during, and after?
The only thing a couple things I would say. One, it is a struggle at times for folks to realize that, that video was great. The Washington Post guys came out and they were doing a story, and they just happened to catch that minute on video. That wasn't a pre-planned thing at all. That was, they just happened to get there early for the interviews they were going to do. And that came out really well to highlight the fact that when we're in emergencies like this, and it doesn't just have to be a pandemic like we have now. I'm sure my colleagues from South Carolina can attest to, during hurricanes and other large emergencies and disasters that we have, the job of public works is huge, and it's vitally important, and it needs to continue every day. So that designator of first responder, which, by the way, we are not considered by HHS or other people like that to be first responders, we need to get included in that. That helps in the ability to ensure the right personal protective equipment for emergencies like this, or in other times when additional funding is going to ensure that vital services happen, that we're included as public works in the first responder category. The second thing I would say is this isn't all we do, and I'm sure that my colleagues on the line can attest to the other things that the public works departments have done during this pandemic. My folks alone handle all of the warehousing, and we've never done that before. In an event like this, where you have massive amounts of personal protective equipment, medical equipment, and other things, testing equipment, all of that, we're now running, I think, somewhere in the neighborhood of, I think, 600,000 square feet of warehouse space throughout the city for the different efforts that are going on. That's not just keeping them open, but that's moving stuff and delivering it to everywhere that it needs to go in the city. We set up an alternate care site for our medical surge, and our DPW employees were the ones that were putting together all the beds and the sharps containers and all that sort of stuff, and putting all that up into the alternate care site. So the workforce that's the backbone of making major operations like this happen, we are a prime candidate for that workforce. Again, another reason to be considered in that group of first responders. And the last thing I would say is, to the directors of public works out there, they take on a new role in many cases when things like this are happening. They're part of that mayor, governor, whatever it may be, inside group of talking about what are the things that need to get done for the cities, the counties, and the states. My role in this, I'm the operations section chief, so I'm running all the operations for the response. Not a traditional role for your public works director. We have a little bit of a unique situation here, but I'm telling you, my colleagues out there, I'm sure, have taken on additional roles and responsibilities as well when we get into a large, long-term event like this, where you have executive staff around the elected official keeping that operation going. So just some things to consider that maybe we didn't think about or have not been thought about, where the public works folks of the country really are a backbone and a major part of this operation.
Thank you so much, Chris. And I know you have to run. Great way to wrap up what you were speaking about first responders, which we'll explore more later. What you've laid out is, as I opened up, we have almost 600 different practices underneath public works. And we've created, AMPWA has created a council, if you will, of public works directors from large cities and counties around the United States right now, and we're expanding up in Canada. What we've learned from that is that many public works departments in the United States are being asked to deal with the homeless issue, which was not one of the practices when public works started. So it's almost as if those public works departments are given the jobs that nobody else can figure out. So appreciate your work and the work of all your staff, and happy National Public Works Week.
Thank
during
you,
this
Scott.
time.
And I
Okay.
greatly appreciate being part of the team here, and my fellow directors and all. We're all doing the same thing at different places and in different ways, and just humbled to be part of the group. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Good luck with everything.
Thanks, sir.
Okay, Ray, I want to move back over to you and to the audience. If you have any questions as we run through this, please use your chat box. We've got staff who will either read them or remind me. We have questions from the audience. But with that, Ray, let's back up a little. What's changed for you when it was business as usual, and then now a pandemic has broken out? Have things remained the same, or have they changed? And if yes, how?
Essentially, Scott, things have changed drastically here at Georgetown. Fortunately enough, we only had 52 confirmed cases in Georgetown, and we had about 9,000 in the state of South Carolina. So that's a plus. But even with those cases, we have to be mindful and to play it safe as well. And so we have taken all kinds of steps to protect our most valuable asset, which is happen to be our employees. And so we have worked with our EOC office to make sure that we are following the practices that have been recommended, and we are doing all we can. So basically now the new paradigm that we have been dealing with for the past several months is trying to ensure that our employees know exactly what is expected of them in order to remain safe. And the social distancing is really the key, we believe, to our success, is that we want to keep everybody separate. We certainly, up until this past Monday, we had a very liberal leave policy to allow employees to work from distant work. But this past Monday, we have changed that policy now to allow employees to resume some type of normalcy at the workplace. We also, while we have distinct work environment, we also had to realize that we provide essential services for the citizens and our guests here in Georgetown, which required us to be on the front line to make sure that the refuse, the waste that's being collected is handled. We had a 25% increase of waste collected in the past 2 months. People working from home find all kinds of ways to dispose of their waste, and caused us to really rethink the work that we were doing. How can we manage the increase of waste that we didn't generally have this time last year or the years in past? So we had to provide the resources to help with that collection effort. But we also, we use all the PPEs that we have been afforded. We disinfect our equipment. We certainly have the separation in the workspace. When we have employees working in the office, we certainly had the distant requirements, or we required our employees to be separated at least 6 feet apart. And we also recently installed shields for our employees who come in contact with the public. So they have some barrier between the employee and the public, in protecting both the employee and the public. We also use face masks a lot in our daily activities. A lot of our employees come in contact with the public, and we provided those sort of PPEs, the gloves and the face masks. One of the things that we learned how to do quite well is the video conferencing. In fact, we are going to incorporate that in our new life in the years to come, because it really has been pretty effective and very informative to be able to use technology to do the work that we have to continue to do. The work we have been doing have not stopped, essentially, in Georgetown. We still fully engaged in work here in Georgetown with all kinds of projects we have on the table that have been contracted or being contracted, or work that our staff is doing. And so essentially we are working on a daily in our daily activities as we have been in the past. So we are very compassionate in regards to our employees. We recognize that they are human and everyone is different. And so we use situational leadership to help with that.
That's great. I'm going to ask more about your role as a leader and all that, and then also I'll ask about if there were any projects that were underway that maybe you had to stop. I'm going to move over to Tyler, get him in, and speak about what changes, if any, have happened since COVID-19 emerged.
Great, thanks, Scott. Yeah, we're actually, oddly enough, a little bit closer to Seattle than we are to Boise here in Moscow. And I think many are aware that Seattle was the initial epicenter for the virus here in the United States. And so without a lot of information, there was a massive amount of trepidation. And it was interesting to see how quickly the public came to realize that the functions that we provide as public works are the most fundamental functions. They were the things that the primary concern for people was, will the water keep flowing and is it safe? Will the drain keep draining and keep treated? Will the traffic signals continue to function? Those were the things that people were worried about up front, but that sense of normalcy, the very foundation for society that's provided by public works, I think is often easy to forget because we're so successful at it so much of the time. We don't get the option to fail. We didn't have the option to say, oh, well, we've got several people that have some symptoms. Let's just close down the water production plant and go home. We don't have that option. We have to figure out how to make it happen. And so we really had to mobilize quickly and generate plans for continuity of service. As Chris said and Ray indicated, we just have to keep it going. And our frontline people are my heroes. Chris alluded to it, the morale that stayed so high is, especially when there were a lot of unknowns. We had my staff coming in running a jet truck to keep the sewer lines clear and flowing that didn't know how much exposure they were bringing upon themselves by doing that, but they did it. They knew that it had to happen and that those things were so important. And the response from the community was just immense. One of the most popular social media posts that the city had was just a post with images of public works people engaging in public works tasks. And the caption said something like, hey, things are a little bit scary right now, but know that the water's going to keep flowing. It's going to keep draining. The streetlights are going to keep functioning. The garbage is going to get picked up. And for good measure, we'll sweep a few streets too. And, people really responded well to that because in that time of crisis, they really came to realize that those were the very basic functions that make us civilized. That's what it is. And so, but a lot changed. It was difficult. All of a sudden, we're having to come up with contingency plans for what if we have to quarantine in place? We're a relatively small city that runs very complicated systems. I've got a few operators that run very complicated systems that require massive amounts of training. And so if I had 3 or 4 wastewater treatment plant operators go down, all of a sudden I'm really in a bad way. And so we had to come up with plans for, okay, what if we have to quarantine on site? Things that we'd never had to think about before, looking at sourcing beds and employees totally willing to say, you know what, if we all get sick, we're all going to stay right here and keep this critical function going. And then one of the things that was indicated as well is just public works ends up being a catch-all. If you look at the scope of services for a lot of other municipal services, they're pretty well defined. And so police, fire, all very well defined services. Everything else comes to us. And so we end up being this catch-all where, as Chris had indicated, we're sourcing tents for the hospital. We're generating traffic plans. We're coming up with to-go parking application programs so that restaurants can continue to serve people food and can try and stay afloat. These are all functions that end up falling to public works. We took the lead in the incident command structure on all of logistics, which also included then food security and looking at is there a need to try and organize a community fund drive, and then all the way down to just the psychological impacts on the community. Last Saturday, we kicked off our first community drive-in that was a cooperative effort between our public works department, the university, and a local independent theater. And so, it's just the breadth of this, but it has had an enormous impact, and that's without even touching on the budgetary impact that I'm sure we'll talk about later.
Absolutely will. Right.
But it's certainly changed the world for us.
Great. Thank you. I want to pick up on a couple of your remarks about normalcy. When I speak with groups of public works, I've often said nobody knows who you are, and there's silence in a room, and I say that's actually a great thing. It means everything is working. The water is flowing. You can flush your toilet. You can have a shower. The roads are paved. And so public works as a profession is often under the radar when it's working well. If your snow's not plowed properly, or if you have potholes, you'll hear about it. But I like the word you use, normalcy, and I've heard this a lot from people around the United States lately, is that public works is creating a sense of normalcy. We've got our clean water. We've got the roads out there. Not a lot of people are using them right now, but we've got the infrastructure out there. The other point about, and I'm looking at the chat online here, one person in the audience wrote, when anything happens and it can't be handled by police or fire, public works handles it. I thought that was funny, because that's what happens when city councils, and Bill Spearman mentioned I held office on one, when they can't find who's going to work on it, public works handles it. Likewise with wildfires, our president-elect of APWA leads a public works department in California, and the firefighters out there were amazing. But she was up around the clock for 3 weeks straight, calling, handling fleet, making sure they had gasoline, making sure the water was flowing, and then clean up afterwards when they had mudslides afterwards. So, what is nice is that police, fire, public works, in most instances, all work with one another. So Ray, what kind of infrastructure projects maybe were underway that are either still happening, or maybe you had to stop? What's happening in your area? I think you're muted. Ray.
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Well, Scott, fortunately, we were able to maintain the level of work that we were performing before the pandemic started here in Georgetown. We have several projects that we have underway. We have landings, navigational landings that we were working on that continued. We had a landfill expansion project that we are winding up here in Georgetown. We have road construction projects that we are fully underway, either in design level or construction levels. We are working in various other areas in building renovations. So basically, we have been able to utilize PPEs in our daily activities to make sure that we are able to perform the services that we've been entrusted to perform.
Thank you. Before we move back over to Tyler, is Ben Rosenbaum still on? Ben is the, I believe, Deputy Chief of Staff for Congresswoman Titus, and he's been with us right from the start for creating a whole host of Public Works and Infrastructure Caucus briefings. Ben, are you around? Did you want to say any words if you're there?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Oh, you're there. Are you on audio only, or?
I'm on audio only. The camera's got.
Go for it, man.
Problem. Well, thanks so much for letting me say a couple of words. I want to thank our participants and especially our panelists. I know this doing these things over Zoom or Ring Central or whatever platform we're using, these are integrating this technology is not always the easiest way to communicate. But I think it does go to the point that we heard from the participants about the having to adapt and the changes that we're making in this kind of new reality. And I think as Congress continues to sort of discuss long-term economic recovery efforts, having this type of presentation gives us some good information about the types of things that our local communities are dealing with, and what types of things we need to do to support those efforts so that we can bring additional technology, additional safety measures, and give our local communities the flexibility to be able to respond to not only this situation, but future situations that can disrupt the kind of day-to-day operations of our country and of our cities. So thanks so much for giving me a couple seconds to say hi, and I'll let you get back to the discussion. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Ben. And I don't know if you were on when we were speaking about the HEROES Act, but our panelists are excited about what might emerge with respect to aid for local governments out of that. They believe it will be very instrumental in helping them. And before you run off, if you have a burning question for the panelists, Tyler or Ray, that you and your boss want to know about, have at it.
Well, thanks so much. I mean, I guess the sort of basic question is, one of the things we're grappling with is the concerns that the employees, essential employees, have in coming back to the workspace and dealing with sort of the new challenges and the health challenges. What's kind of the morale of your employees and workers, and how are they kind of dealing with this? I mean, they're not just thinking of their jobs, but also their families and that kind of aspect of it. Can we sort of talk about the psychological part of dealing with what they're doing? Thank you.
That's great. Tyler, I'll ask you to respond. How large is your staff?
So I have a staff of 75 full-time employees.
Okay.
And yeah, I would say, Ben, I've been very impressed. I think that the reason that a lot of people, people that are aware of city jobs as kids generally say, oh, I want to be a fireman, I want to be a policeman. And everyone has their story about how they encountered public works, but a similar tone that you'll hear from everybody, a similar refrain, is that once they encountered it, they were really drawn to it. And I think it's just because of the need-driven nature, that it is just so fundamental than what you provide for the community. And so our staff takes a lot of pride in that. I've been so impressed with them that even in the face of this, it was really stiff upper lip. We've got a job to do and we're going to get it done, much the same as was indicated in the video that was shown earlier with the staff from the DC Public Works Department. So that certainly has been the case. It's been really difficult because it's just been an onslaught of bad news for them. It's been, okay, here's this virus. You have to come in. We've got to keep these services going. Oh, by the way, we're having to freeze salaries because we've got problems now with financially that we see coming with the economy, with an uptick in default on utility accounts. And so, the concern for the job was a big thing. And then just the concern longer term, because as municipalities, it takes so much longer for our finances to recover, a little while for it to hit, and then takes a while to recover. So I would say that our staff, they are keeping their chins up. They're working hard, and they recognize the critical nature of the work that they do. And they really do appreciate it when they are recognized as the first responders that they are, when they're included in those conversations about the medical workers and the grocery store workers, the doctors and the police and fire. When people recognize that really our people are the ones that make it so all those other functions are possible. But then just there is a longer term trepidation about, okay, all the more we need this infrastructure now, but will there be a financial undermining of what we're trying to do?
Thanks, Tyler. Ray, you had spoken a little about your staff and the morale, which was pretty high, you said. You want to expand upon that, what's happening with your staff, how they're handling this? You might be muted again.
I am. So thank you.
Yeah.
Scott. Yes, in fact, our employees last week prepared a video with our PIO here in Georgetown. We have about 15 employees who participated in the video, talking about their jobs and talking about the impact that they have on this community. You know, without them, many things would not be able to occur in regards to transportation, in regards to solid waste, in regards to clean water. Those things may be impacted if those guys and gals were not available. And so they all have been speaking very, very favorable and very positive about their jobs, and the attitudes that they come to work with has been relatively high. I must commend the staff that I work with on what they're doing. This week is National Public Works Week, and we always have a big celebration here in Georgetown. But this week we kind of modified it to have a virtual presentation on this past Monday, and we had our chairman of the county council and our county administrator with us and making a proclamation, and we had a great time in just recognizing our employees for doing a great job. So I just feel that our staff understands what it means to be an essential employee, because we are always confronted with that almost every year with the hurricane situation that we have in this area. So we are kind of used to it, albeit a little different, but we are always on the front line providing those kinds of services for our constituents.
Thanks, Ray. Tyler, and then I'll ask Ray afterwards. You're both in leadership roles. What do you think has prepared you for being a leader during this period of time? Tyler, we'll start with you.
Great, thanks, Scott. Yeah, there's an almost required sang-froid on the part of Public Works, this calm in the face of disaster. As Ray indicated, this is just another in a series of things we have to deal with. Our lives are largely, it's funny, we make schedules and we have to make schedules, but we kind of scoff at anybody thinking that they're going to be able to stick. But you get a taste of that with Chris being able to stay on for half an hour, and then it's like, okay, I got to go. There's stuff going on, and so whether it be a large pipe failure or an earthquake or a hurricane or a tornado or a large snowstorm or anything, Public Works ends up responding. Even if it's a large structure fire, we're the ones who go out and set up the traffic control. And so I think Public Works generally as a field trains us to be able to deal with problems and to remain calm and figure it out because we have to. And I think that when there's not an option to just say, well, this was too tough and we're going to just scrap it, come back and try again tomorrow, that's never an option for us. And so the entirety of the field really does train us to figure things out, keep our chins up and work through it. And then, just the training is geared toward that. Organizations like the APWA continually provide training, and we're able to network and talk to each other because we're all doing the same things. And so having a network that we can lean on and say, hey, I'm confronted with this thing that I don't know how to do, help me out. That's also very helpful as we try and make sure that we're positioned to deal with whatever challenges are thrown our way.
Thanks. Before we move over to Ray, I believe that James Longley from Congressman Fitzpatrick's office is online, and Congressman Fitzpatrick is the other co-chair of our House Public Works and Infrastructure Caucus. Are you there, James? Maybe not, or you're muted. But if you are there and you want to say a few words, we'd welcome that. Okay. Ray, leadership. Wait, are you there, James?
Hey, hi, can you hear me?
Oh, yes, we can. Thanks. Welcome.
Great. Yes, thank you for having me. This has been a great briefing. Really enjoyed kind of seeing a variety of different public works departments speak. And I think going forward, my boss, along with Chairwoman Titus, are both on the T&I committee, Transportation and Infrastructure Committee. we're really hoping to see a surface transportation bill that could hopefully become law before the end of the year. That would have ample support for public works departments across the country. So that's something my boss is focused on, and hopefully we'll see something good in the next few weeks.
We like hearing all of what you stated right now. That's great. We were speaking briefly about the HEROES Act that was passed last week in the House. And any thoughts about, what elements might remain in that?
So we've gotten lots of push from state and local authorities to have infrastructure for transportation departments in states included. They were requesting $50 billion. I think only about 10 made it into the HEROES Act. So in the next bill that is likely to become law, there hopefully will be more funding for that, and some will also go to public works departments as well. So we have yet to see any final plans or even initial plans for the next package, but that would become law. But that is our hope, and my boss is focused on that.
Well, thanks so much for your help and helping us organize this. And as I spoke about at the start of this briefing, we hold these briefings almost quarterly now on a whole host of different issues, from transportation, water, emergency management, and we'll have to share all 598 practices under Public Works and have a briefing on each one. So we have plenty of time ahead of us. We've got about 5 minutes left. I'd like to get final words from Tyler and Ray about if you could ask Congress for assistance for what's happening right now and/or funding for infrastructure, what would that look like? And either of you can start if you're unmuted.
Well, this is Ray Funny from Georgetown, South Carolina. And we certainly appreciate what Congress have done for and with us over the past many years. But as we are confronted on a daily basis with our infrastructure, from our roads, from our bridges, from our buildings that we have to maintain, we certainly hope that consideration be given to fund the replacement, particularly of our old bridges that are become worn and need to be repaired or replaced. And so we hope that those congressional members understand the importance of transportation and the need for our communities to be able to continue operational and not have some catastrophic situation because we failed to make the necessary repairs or replacement of those large infrastructures. So I hope that those will be consideration of our congressional members to help us fund those things.
Thanks so much, Ray. Tyler?
Yeah, I think it's a really important and great question. The funding that came through the CARES Act, the way that it was distributed through our state, there was a certain amount allocated, but that it had to be a reimbursement directly for COVID-related activities, which we certainly have many of those, but it's going to be the ancillary impact of COVID that's going to be a bigger problem for us. And so from a funding perspective, the support, transportation is always underwater. The gas tax is fundamentally flawed, and with fewer people driving, that means fewer gallons consumed, which means even less money coming toward transportation, and that's going to be a big issue. We already struggle. I'm in the middle of putting, I've got a streets budget meeting today, and we struggle to try and fund our plan. And the real catch-22 of public works is every dollar that doesn't go to those capital budgets and keeping the infrastructure in good condition, it ends up exacerbating the escalating maintenance and operation budgets. Because if it's older infrastructure that should have been replaced, now I've got to spend more money and more time trying to duct tape and baling twine the thing together. And so it becomes an insidious circle if we don't fund those things properly and kick them down the road. And it's often too easy a thing to kick down the road because the condition difference between a pipe or a roadway from one year to the next may not be drastic, But then within a 5-10 year period, it becomes very, very serious, and you've got an accumulation of those relegated costs. And so that would be a thing that I would encourage them to look at, is just flexibility to cities to use, getting some funds out to use as the city sees fit. The cities are amazingly efficient, and I'll guarantee that it's not going to go into a splash pad if I've got water lines that need to be repaired. It's going to be something that if we have some flexibility with where we have that individual need, that would be massively helpful. And again, transportation bill that tries to push some more money to transportation would be massively helpful. And then the last thing I'd mention, Scott, is just from a workforce perspective. I think Public Works is an amazing investment for workforce programs. We have a huge retirement wave coming into our industry. These are good jobs with benefits, technical training that often only require a high school education to get in on. And so they're a great vehicle to people having a really good career. And so when we look at training opportunities, there could be some real opportunities for funding that goes toward, one, maintaining our current employees as we get through this in the short term, but two, looking at training programs to help people enter this industry, because we're going to need them.
Thank you so much for that response, and thank you to both of our panelists. I'm going to have Bill Spearman wrap us up, but before that, I want to thank Andrea Eels, Director of our Government Affairs, who's online, and we had her name and email on a slide at the start. We have other of our Washington staff online: Sean Garcia, who handles water issues; Marty Williams, who handles emergency management, first responder issues, and hurricanes; Michael Altman on our staff handles workforce; Charles Arena is public relations and public affairs. We also have Ann Jackson, who works out of our Washington office, who handles advocacy programs in Canada, up in Ottawa. So if any of you who are online today have more questions about any of the areas that we work on, please reach out. And before we turn it over to Bill, I understand our President-elect, Mary Joyce Ivers, is online, audio only, I believe. And I was actually speaking about her work with Fleet during the wildfires, and she led the emergency operations office as a person who works in public works. Are you online still, Mary Joyce? If you wanted to wish everybody a happy Public Works Week. If not, I will turn it back over to Bill Spearman. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. I really appreciate the message from Congresswoman Titus, Mr. Rosenbaum, Mr. Longley. Thank you so much for all of your efforts, and with the House Public Works and Infrastructure Caucus, it's a very important thing that you do. I want to thank our panelists. Just fantastic that we were able to introduce these, not only to the staff of the congressional offices, but also to our members. And I think that's very important. When I hear Tyler make his presentations, he always loves to say that when we started forming communities, that's when we needed public works. Mm-hmm. We were hunter-gatherers and living on the plains. We didn't really need public works. Once we started forming communities of people, that's when we needed public works. And I look at people like Ray, that not only is worried about people in the Waccamaw Neck, which is up closer to Myrtle Beach, but he's also worried about the people in Plantersville and all the other small communities there in Georgetown County. And then I heard Mr. Gellhart, I heard Chris with his Marine voice. And anyone that has ever been in the military, especially the Marines or the Navy, had to run across a gunnery sergeant. And those gunnery sergeants were tough as nails, but they had one purpose in mind. They wanted everyone to come back. And so that's very important, that we want our staff to be safe as possible, do their job, but get back safer. It's remarkable what our folks have done over the past 2 months. Again, we were with Chris in Washington, D.C. on March 11th. this had not really hit. We'd not known what we were going to face. But unbelievably, our public works folks, as they always do, they adjust and they make the job done, and they get it done purposefully. So I really thank everybody for being on the call today. Thank you for the congressional staff that is taking the time out of your day. Thank you to our staff that's put this on. And again, thank you to our panelists. With that, we'll look forward to our next briefing. And also go on our website, apwa.net, and we have a special section on COVID-19 information for best management practices and other information that you will find helpful. Thank you, Scott.
Thanks very much. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.